I'm delighted to say that Nish Kumar is still with me for the gratitude list, and we're going to talk about 5 things that you are grateful for. Nish, what role does gratitude play in your life?
I'm trying to do it more because, I think, God, I'm sort of stuck in a kind of, I'm a person who rolls their eyes when people talk about gratitude lists. That's the real truth, is that for a long time I've sort of rolled my eyes about it. But I think what I've learned from, essentially traumatizing myself by telling myself a story about me getting killed every day is that actually it probably does matter. The kind of stories you tell yourself and the thing that you're rolling around in your head every day probably does matter. So I'm trying to more actively practice gratitude for it.
Well, something that I wanted to cover in the main episode we didn't have time for was when you, something you said about your ADHD diagnosis, which rang true with me, but from a sort of completely different angle, where you said it's given me some permission to not yell at myself. I'm not a shouter in my household. I think if I raised my voice to my girlfriend Amy, she'd be more confused than anything else, but I yell at myself. Amy said to me, I know you're not shouting at me, but it's quite exhausting living in a household with someone who's constantly yelling to themselves. And I definitely have that gratitude for that permission.
Yeah.
From like a sort of a separate type of therapeutic journey. But that is an example of how gratitude can like help frame something difficult, or something that you could easily think is negative as something good. It's like, oh wow, this difficult thing has given me a reason not to yell at myself in my house and exhaust my partner.
God, yeah. So
do you speak to yourself more kindly now?
It's an ongoing process. I'm only saying, and I'll be completely honest with you. I'm only saying that because that was a big subject of today's therapy session that I had. It was a big subject, and it was because as part of the sort of ADHD therapeutic process, Amy had to fill out some forms, not actual forms. It was just my therapist said, this is a string of questions that I would like your partner to answer. And it's really interesting, and it's obviously quite revealing because one of the things she consistently says, apart from me locking the door of our house and leaving the keys in the door, which I should stop doing, one of the consistent themes is that, she's like, it would be nicer if he was a bit kinder to himself. So that it was interesting seeing that written down. And so I'm not there. I'm on my way with it, but I'm not there with it at all.
Mm-hmm. I find like I found that like alcohol drove a lot of that negative self-talk, but I also found that if I laugh at it, the laugh is creeping further and further back in the shouting.
Yeah.
So sometimes now I'll get to, and that's as far as I get.
Before you start laughing about it.
Yeah. Because I'm like, oh, is that guy here today? Are we hanging out with him today? Because it's only 6:45 in the morning. And if that guy's here, it's going to be a long day. And that makes me laugh. And that I just find that kind of just dissipates.
Yeah. Is that a part of recovery? Is gratitude one of the, is it part of the 12 steps? Or is it sort of in the background?
No, but it's a big, part of the recovery cinematic universe.
Yeah.
So
the RCU.
Big gratitude list is a big thing because I think it's about turning very negative mindsets, very sort of self-piteous mindsets into positive, grateful mindsets.
Right, yeah. It's the Nick Fury. It's not the protagonist of any of the individual steps, but it is in the background, quite a lot of them, giving some pretty key instructions.
But it's like you're saying about why comedy attracted you, because you said they were taking things you were scared of and making them funny.
Yeah.
So if I'm at if there's roadworks and I've left it too tight to get to the station in my car, and I make a decision through humor to be grateful for the fact I have a car and a train, as opposed to being annoyed at the fact I'm late and I should have done this and I should be like that and I should be this person. So anyway, what's first on your gratitude list today, please?
Well, I think based on the conversation we've had and based on the events of my life. I think we should probably start with Amy, and I'm very grateful for her. And we've been together for 14 years, and that it's quite an interesting 14 years because we were sort of in our 20s when we first took up with one another. And then, now I'm now 40 and she's not 40. She'd like me to mention that. But so it's quite an interesting span of your life, to be at that close quarters with another person. And I had not shared my life with anybody, and it was quite a strange and interesting thing to have somebody. She always says, it's weird, isn't it, to just have someone watching you the whole time. It is weird when you're sort of when somebody, and she sort of means it reciprocally as well, but it is strange when somebody will just go, why do you do that? About something that you've been sort of doing your whole life, really. It was an interesting thing to be scrutinized in that way. But she is...
Also, there's not many people who can say that they've been together for, was it 14 years?
Yeah.
And seen 7 prime ministers.
Oh, man. It's been a wild amount of prime ministers. We started going out under the coalition government.
Yeah.
We started going out under David Cameron.
Oh, well, I'm counting Cameron twice.
Okay, you count
as coalition prime minister
and the solo project.
Yeah,
you're counting Genesis and Phil Collins. Fine, yeah. It was once he got rid of Peter Gabriel (brackets Nick Clegg), he was able to do his real gangster shit. I mean, she has always been. She's very wise. And she's very kind. And I think one of the most important things I learned from her was that it's not actually enough to be clever. And clever is actually useless if it doesn't have kindness running through it.
The secret, if you're going to be someone who has solutions and analyzes things and critiques things, there has to be a gentleness running underneath that.
For sure. And it's not naive, because she one of the things that she's so much better than me at is she has just ability to read people. She's a real loss to politics as an industry. Her decision to be a stand-up comedian is a real loss to politics because she genuinely has an ability. She gets such a quick read on people. And so she doesn't trust many people because she's so skeptical in so many ways. But whatever happens, even if she doesn't trust someone, she meets them with kindness. If we were not to get, people sometimes are like, I wonder what would have happened if you hadn't been with your partner. I mean, I would have accidentally joined Scientology about 6 different times. Because she has a much better ability to go, that's not a person you should trust. That's not a person you should, be vulnerable to. That's not a person you should share a secret with. She's very perceptive. But that it's great. It's important to be perceptive. It's important to be clever. But you have to have a shot of kindness running, throughout it. I was talking to my sister-in-law, and I was saying, Amy was going to help somebody who's doing something, and I said, I think it's nice for her because it's nice for her friend because it's a family thing and her friend's family knows Amy, so I think it's nice that Amy's done it because she knows the family. And my friend was like, yeah, it's also just who she is. That's who Amy is. She's always going to go and do that stuff. And she's an interesting combination of so generous and also appropriately cautious. And I think you also realise there's kind of a difference between being appropriately cautious and someone who has an anxiety disorder, and that's a lot of the dynamic of our relationship. But I'm, and she's very funny, and that's when you boil it all down, kind, smart, funny. There's not you can't really ask for much more in your life.
Fantastic. So number 2, please.
Number 2, I'll sort of broaden it out to, my friends. Like, there are so many points in my life in the last few years where my friends have kind of stepped in and like intervened and helped me so directly in so many ways that I'm so profoundly grateful. I'm so lucky. You know, I was being interviewed by a journalist a couple of weeks ago, and she was talking about, you know, my early career was not a roaring success. It was a slow burn. And actually, she said, so why didn't you give up? And I said, oh, I just, you know, my friends would just sort of tell me not to. You know, like, so when I say, like, I'm grateful for my friends, I'm sort of grateful in an abstract sense. I'm also sort of quite specifically financially grateful for them, you know, sort of not, you know, like, buoying me along for all of those years. And then, you know, there's so much like complex support that has happened in the last few years. And, you know, I do read a lot of articles about how, you know, I think particularly heterosexual middle-aged men have really struggled to hold on to, you know, their friendship groups. And, you know, I'm sort of very grateful that there's a text group that we're part of that is exclusively pathetic middle-aged men.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also aware that given a lot of what you talking about in the main episode, I was hearing for the first time, considering we probably exchanged 50 messages a day for the last 11 years, does make me think that we might need to make some changes to the operation of that text group.
No, but that's also, you know, that's a part of it. You've been through a lot in the last few years, and what you sort of learn is you need an X-Men, you need a traveling Wilburys. You need your super group. You have to have a bunch of different...
Yeah, that's true.
You know, the conversation that you talked about having with Lou, you sort of couldn't have had with anybody else.
I certainly couldn't have had it on that text group. Can you imagine?
Well, because it would have been interspersed with some gossip about the comedy industry.
Me saying to Acaster, I want to drink myself to death. He'd be like, I've been telling you that for years.
But there are times where the specific dynamics of your relationship with Lou and also the stuff that she'd been through, there are points where, you know, you sort of need, you need a varied group of
Well, this
people.
is why, you know, we're very lucky, and I'm very grateful for having a plurality of friends.
Yeah.
Like some people, that you're talking about middle-aged men struggling to like have friends, keep them, because we're not told to tend to those relationships. We're told to tend to our romantic relationships and our relationships with our kids. But to be able to have, you know, a friendship group for crying with, a friendship group for laughing with, a friendship group for sport, a friendship group for like who's free this evening, you know, friends that I haven't seen for 5 years that I speak to every day on WhatsApp.
Yeah.
So, yeah, agreed with friends.
Yeah.
What's your third thing?
I'm very grateful for my family, and I've only deliberately switched the order of those two things because I know it will irritate my mother. But yeah, I'm very grateful for my family. You know, I think you I think you spent so much of your time thinking about all the things that are bad about you that as a result of your parents. You sort of forget, you know, and it's complicated and different for everybody, but I'm sort of keenly aware that I've pretty directly inherited all the things that are good about me from my parents, you know, and I think that there is a kind of, it is true gratitude. And I also sort of realised that sometimes, and I mean, this must be why I don't have children. It must be so hard. Because one of the things I feel like I've observed is actually the things that you tell your kids to do or not do is actually slightly of secondary importance. And the most important thing actually is the way you conduct yourself. And the way you conduct yourself, you spend your whole life telling your children, do this, do that, do this. But if you don't then practice the things that you're telling your kids to do, it's a waste of your time. It is a total waste of your time. You can tell your kids all the right stuff, but if you're being a dick to people, they will observe it, internalize it, and repeat it. And so I'm really grateful that I think, a lot of the things that a lot of the ways that my parents conducted themselves, there's like such a sort of decency to them. And, some of that does actually then bleed into your politics, because I think there is this kind of, my parents were both very keen to just go, no person has more value than another person. And there are but also they taught me to be very unapologetic. And, if somebody is racist to you, you don't have to put up with that. You don't have to think that that's okay. And, my brother is just like, whenever my brother leaves our house, my girlfriend Amy will always turn to me and go, he's a good dude. he's a good man. And like my kind of wider family, sort of that have always been, I've got family everywhere. I've got India, America, Australia, and some of them are so like comedy fans and are so supportive of me doing comedy. I've got these sort of two loose cousins, because they're my uncle's kids, and he's like 10 years younger than my mum, so they're way younger than me. So it's got these two sort of children that just sort of bowl around with me, and they live in Australia. And when we were at the Melbourne Festival, I kept saying to people, oh, my cousins are going to be in town for a couple of days. And I think if I say cousin, they assume 30 at the youngest. And then these like Australian teenagers turn up. So they're A, expecting British people, and then B, they're definitely not expecting them to be 19 and 21. And they sort of turn up, and so everybody's like very fascinated with whatever that dynamic is. But like I'm very sort of supported by them.
I loved a description you had of your family life, where you said you go home to be force-fed enormous meals and then told to exercise more. I thought that was so great.
I think that one of the best things that's like unlocked, you talk about a piece of stand-up that's like really helped me in my life. Jen Brister has a great bit of material about the difference between mothers and their sons and mothers and their daughters, and it's like her impression of mothers with their sons going, you mummy's special boy, you can never do anything, you mummy's special boy. And then mothers to the daughters just go, you look fat in that. And I really did realize, because my mum had two sons, and I was like, I think she just raised me as a daughter. I think she just decided, well, I've got two boys, but I'm just going to speak to this one like he's a daughter. But yeah, I'm very grateful to, my brother and I are friends. I would say, sort of separate from our kind of familial relationship. Like he's a mate of mine, and grateful to my parents, grateful to my sort of whole extended. My cousin is whenever I go, like when I go, my cousin lives in the Midlands, and when I go to Birmingham on tour, it's exciting. She's going to come. We go for dinner afterwards. It's fun. Like I'm in jazz to see her. And like, so it's nice to be in that position where you don't feel like you're acting out of obligation. And sometimes my mum will say, I live very close to my parents, and sometimes my mum will say, like at Christmas, my mum was like, we got to spend more time together at Christmas. I was like, dude, that's for other you and I need to spend less time together.
So what's your fourth thing on your list, please?
Okay, now we're going to get into
specific early Dylan.
Yeah. I'm very grateful. I am very grateful to. I mean, I hate myself for saying this. I'm extremely grateful to comedy. Like I'm extremely grateful I has given me this like great group of friends. It's given me this like, like I have an amount of money I can put on my career. That's kind of the weird thing about it. I always say that there's like people that I have abstract gratitude towards, but there is a specific amount of money that I can put in my what I owe Alex Horn column. And actually, it's not even the fee for Taskmaster. I was still doing it in the Dave years. The money has improved a lot, but the specific financial benefit of that show to my touring audience that continues nearly a decade after I did it is sort of is great. But also, I see a lot of shows. I go to watch a lot of shows in Edinburgh, and someone said to me, why do you go and see that amount of stuff? And I sort of had to explain to them, I'm still a fan.
Mm.
You know, when I go and watch something, I'm not watching it. It's sort of probably a failing of me, but I'm not really watching it from a critical perspective as a fellow professional. I will often just sort of forget that I do it. You know, and afterwards I'll be, you know, if I go and see, you know, if you go and see like Maria Bamford, you're not at the end of the show going, yeah, I do that. You go at the end of the show, you're like, what the hell was that? You know, you go and see fucking Acaster pretending to be his own tribute act. You're not sat there thinking, well, as a fellow professional, let me critique this. You're thinking, how the fuck has this motherfucker done this? Like, what's happened here? Yeah. I'm still like watching it like it's a magic trick. When, you know, when I'm like really enjoying something like that, I'm still, but also one of the things that I've learned is that the guy was talking to me about ADHD and he said, what happens when you do stand up? And I said to him, I guess like I wasn't really thinking, I just answered very honestly. I said, oh, that's the only time when there's no voices going in my head. And I remember the first time I did stand up, because also I've been thinking about it recently, because it's in October this year, it'd be exactly 20 years since my first gig. And after the gig, I remember thinking, wow, I wasn't thinking about anything else. And he said, that's because your brain chemistry is not right. So you've got, you know, your dopamine and cortisol levels are all over the place. But when you go on stage, the adrenaline of being in front of an audience levels out your brain chemistry. And he said the bit that you're on stage, that's the normal brain. That's what everyone else's brain is like. And you're like, oh, okay. And so I think it did, I suppose I could have felt resentful of it or felt somehow that it was like, but actually I was actually filled with this sort of weird sense of gratitude that the job that I've ended up doing has such a kind of, I mean, I suppose it's probably not a coincidence, but I was filled with a weird sense of gratitude for it.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, if comedy didn't exist, where the hell would we be? Ellis would still be working at that pipe company. Acaster would have gone mad and I'd have killed myself.
Yeah. Adam Pally, a really funny American comedian, was talking about the sort of alternative comedy scene in America, in New York in the early 2000s, and he would describe the lineup. He was specifically talking about Reggie Watts, who's another person. If I go watch I watched Reggie Watts do an hour a couple of years ago, and I'm not watching that thinking, let me give you some pointers, Reggie. But he said he described it as a group of people that under any other circumstances would not be allowed to fly internationally. That is sort of the thing of it. But yeah, I feel very grateful to comedy in general.
Well, I think that's enough. I think that's a lot. Amy, your friends, your family, and comedy. Yeah. That's a pretty decent gratitude list.
Yeah, and there's no point in the fifth one. We can just go quickly through. It's everything, all of Bob Dylan's recorded output, and every cinema I've ever been to in my entire life.
Even the video of him with Van Morrison, where they're trying to sing a duet of Crazy Love, and it's clear that I'm not sure Bob Dylan's heard the song before.
Yeah, first of all, I said it's recorded output, so I have confined it to just the record, just the studio albums and maybe the live albums. But it's some of the stuff that is total rubbish. Like, it sort of also, it does give you a bit of permission when you listen to some of it, and some of it is rubbish. There is a part of you that's like, oh, okay, well maybe I'll just give myself a break because even the guy who I think is the best at all of these things is occasionally. You know, we've all got an Empire burlesque in us.
Yeah, and also, like, we have a very high expectation of other creatives, like a musician, to be at the top of their game for 60 years.
Yeah.
What other profession?
Yeah.
Like, Van Morrison, in my humble opinion, was the best singer-songwriter 1967 to 1974.
Yeah.
That's a huge achievement, given the competition he was up against.
It's like the great arc of your understanding, because The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill is the first album I loved that I understood was an album, and it wasn't just 10 songs that had been recorded. It was sequenced deliberately, and it was trying to tell me a story. And people will often, and for years, I would read articles and I would have conversations. Where is she? What's she doing? Who cares?
Yeah.
She did this thing that is perfect. That
I was reading about the guy from Neutral Milk Hotel yesterday, and that all of the like clickbaity stuff is he wrote the best album ever made and then he disappeared.
Yeah.
He's like, he didn't disappear.
Yeah.
He just lived with his wife and did some projects that you can't be bothered to talk about because they're so obscure.
But if you made The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, or if you made In the Aeroplane Over the Sea, you are entitled to never do anything ever again.
100%. I've been saying that before about my first Edinburgh stand-up show. I didn't need to come back 10 more times. Well, Nish, thank you so much for giving us your time. It's been a real pleasure to chat to you.
Thank you for having me.